Hi everyone, welcome to episode 11 of my chess rating climb, where I play a game of chess and track my improvement. Let's get into a 15-minute game. Okay, we got the black pieces, and we'll start off with the Scandinavian. Okay, so after they develop the knight, we can just go ahead and snap off the pawn with our knight. Pre-move the take back with the queen. Okay, so if they bring out their bishop to attack my knight, I could just snap off this knight, but in this case, I'd actually prefer to win a tempo on the bishop. So I can actually slide my knight right back here. And they either have to spend time protecting the bishop, in which case I just take it, or moving the bishop out of the way. Okay, so now I can actually go ahead and push my A pawn, threatening to trap the piece here, encouraging them to push their A pawn and induce a weakness. Okay, so now I can actually restrict their movement even further. Push the A pawn one more time. Bishop has to go back. Okay, so now I can either push my E pawn or my G pawn to let my bishop out and castle. I think in this position, the fianchetto was a little bit more appropriate. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I'll fianchetto and castle on the next turn. Okay, let's continue with the plan. Interesting. Okay, so that seems like it creates a bit of a weakness, pushing their D pawn, because now, let's say I pin his knight to his queen, right? I pin his knight to his queen with my bishop, okay? Then I threaten to take his D pawn by taking his knight on the next turn, and then leaving this pawn without adequate defenders. Here's the problem with that, though, is that after I do that, his queen and his bishop, his queen, which will be right here, and his bishop right here are both pointing at my weak F pawn. So I don't think that quite works. So I think before I do anything, I just need to castle. Or alternatively, I could develop my other knight to put more pressure on this D pawn. But I actually prefer castling first, because I know I'm gonna castle anyway, right? And may as well just get my king safe before I try to start winning more material. Yep, I was about to say I suspect castle on the next turn, which is exactly what they did. Okay, so now, if I develop my knight to c6 and add another attacker to this D pawn, he could either add another defender with his bishop, or he could just push his pawn to kick my knight. In which case, where does my knight actually go? Seems like my knight would probably just go to e5, right, and offer a trade of his knight and my knight. Yeah, I don't think it's wise to place my knight in a spot where it could be kicked by the pawn. So actually, okay, so here's what we do. In order to prevent him pushing the pawn and kicking my knight on c6, I need to push my e pawn to e6, right? But before I do that, I need to let my bishop out. So I'm gonna pin his knight with my bishop, then push e6, then develop my knight. Interesting. Okay, so he doesn't bother adding another defender to his pawn. Okay, so I wonder if I go after this pawn here by moving my knight to c6 and attacking his pawn, I wonder if he'll just move his bishop to e5, both protecting his pawn and also offering a trade of bishops. Yeah, also worth noting that my c pawn is currently undefended. So if we just do a big trade, at the end of the trade, it'll just be an even exchange because I'll essentially trade my c pawn for his d pawn. Okay, so right now, his knight is pinned to his queen. So can I just win this pawn right now? Let's see. If I take his pawn with my bishop, he takes with the queen, I take his knight, and he takes my queen as an in-between move. I have to take his queen back, and then he takes my bishop. So yeah, I'm down a piece for a pawn in that line. So I can't actually do that. Yeah, and taking his knight and having him take back with the queen to win this pawn doesn't work either, because then both my c pawn and my b pawns are loose. So I actually do think I need to develop my knight first, just so that the queen won't have eyes on my b pawn. after that big exchange. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Actually, no. The entire point of bringing out my bishop was so that I could push e6 first. Yeah, let's push e6, then develop my knight. And hopefully I'll just be able to load up on this weak d-pawn. Interesting. Okay, so he moves his queen to d3, presumably because he wants to alleviate the pin on his knight, and also he wants to form a battery on the d-file, which is fine, but I don't know, that doesn't seem that great, because if I develop my knight and he forms the battery, well, first of all, that reintroduces the pin on his knight because it pins his knight to his rook after he does that, right? And also it means that after I take his knight, he still has to take back with the queen, thereby relieving a defender of the pawn. So yeah, I really like that. Let's go ahead and develop the knight and just try to pile up as much pressure on this pawn as possible. Interesting. Okay, didn't anticipate that. Does that still just lose a pawn, though? Let's see, does that lose a pawn? Okay, so I have several candidate moves. I obviously have to do something about my bishop because it's currently hanging. So I could either just snap off the knight with my knight, he takes with the bishop, I take his bishop, he takes with a pawn, I take his queen, and that's just an even exchange. Alternatively, I could just move my bishop to attack his queen. If he does that, he could take my knight with his knight as a counterattack to my queen. Okay, so I attack his queen. I attack his queen. Knight takes. Then bishop takes queen. Knight takes queen. Rook takes knight. Pawn takes bishop. And am I down a piece in that line? Let's see, we would both be down queens, and I would be down a bishop and a knight, and he would be down just a knight. So yeah, I would lose a piece in that line. Okay, alternatively, I could attack the queen. He takes my knight. I take his knight. And then he has to move his queen. And then I just win this pawn. Yeah, I think that actually looks best. It does double my c-pawns. But I think I am up a pawn in that line. Okay, so I attack his queen. He takes my knight. I take his knight. He has to move his queen somewhere. And then after he saves his queen, I snap off his pawn. But does he win my c-pawn that will be on c6 at the end of the exchange? Yeah, I think that is the line. Because really the only candidate moves that even make it even a little bit of sense to me is bishop f5 or knight takes knight. I don't want to play knight takes knight because then that allows him to eventually support his e-pawn with his f-pawn, and I don't want to allow him to do that, right? So I think at the risk of doubling my pawns, it is worth it to win a pawn at the end of the line. Okay, so he does as I predicted. Now, I can't take his queen, because if I do that, then I end up losing a piece after all the exchanges are made. So I have to take his knight, and then I'm pretty sure I'll be winning a pawn at the end of the line. Okay, so he moves his queen to f3. Okay, so here's the thing. He's going to win my c-pawn. Okay, yeah. So here's the problem. If he eventually takes my c-pawn with his queen, then he'll be threatening a fork with his bishop against my knight and my queen. So I do need to watch out for that. Oh, but you know what? We can actually do this. After I snap off this pawn, and he takes my pawn with his queen, I can actually push my e-pawn so that his bishop no longer looks at my c-pawn. Yeah, let's do that. So he moves his bishop to attack my rook. Now, do I have a counterattack against the queen or any other way to win material somehow? I don't think so. So I either need to slide my rook out of the way or just bring my bishop back to offer the trade. You know what? I think I need to bring my rook to the open file anyway. And there are no, as far as I can see, there are no like checkmating ideas with the queen infiltrating into the g7 square because so far the bishop still controls that square. So yeah, let's go ahead and slide the rook over to the semi-open file. Now he can still take my c-pawn, but at this point, Like, his c-pawn is weak, first of all. Okay, so he's pinned my bishop to my queen. Okay, so here's the most obvious way to alleviate this pin. Yeah, all I need to do is slide my queen up to f6, which continues to protect my bishop and alleviates the pin, and also threatens to just exchange more material by taking this knight. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Nice and simple. Worth noting that my c-pawn is still loose, so I do need to watch out for that. Okay, so he does decide to take my c-pawn. Okay. So how exactly do I want to handle this? So right now, his c-pawn is still loose, right? His c-pawn is still loose. So if I take his knight, and he takes back with the pawn, that doubles his pawns, right? Or he could take back with the queen, in which case I still am happy to double his pawns. So yeah, that looks fine to me. Okay, so he doesn't want to trade queens. So right now, my c-pawn is loose. That's definitely a problem. I don't want to resign my rook to pawn guarding duty, but it looks like I might have to. Yeah, I think I need to slide my rook over, because if I take this pawn with my bishop, well, if I take this pawn with my bishop, he slides his rook over, both to save his rook and also attack my bishop, and after I move my bishop out of the way, then my c-pawn falls, and then I have to move my knight out of the way, and after, it's just an even exchange, and I don't want to do that. Okay. Not to mention, it gives him a pass pawn if my c-pawn falls. So yeah, let's slide the rook over. So he chooses to move his rook there instead. That doesn't seem right. Let's see, do I have a tactic to win any material? Let's see, right now this square is controlled by the bishop, so I can't move my knight there. Also controlled by the queen, obviously. Okay. Let's see, if I move my queen here to attack this bishop, I don't think that does a whole lot. After he moves his bishop, I could offer a queen trade. Let's see, queen here, bishop here, then queen here to offer the trade. Does that work? Yeah, I need to hurry. I'm down to 2.5 minutes. Alternatively, I could just slide my rook over right here, offer the trade of rooks. Yeah, in the interest of time, I need to see if I can simplify. Worth noting that if he doubles up his rooks here to create this battery, I can actually just take this pawn, right? Because this rook would be overloaded. So if I took this pawn, he couldn't take my bishop because I would take his rook actually with checkmate. And if he takes my rook, then it's just one big exchange. So if he slides his rook over to create the battery, that does actually just lose a pawn. Yep. Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm right. Okay, so take. He can't take because it's pinned to a mate threat. Or I could go take, and he goes take, 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 and I'm just up a pawn in the exchange. So yeah, let's snap that off. Okay, so he does decide to exchange. Okay, let's see. That doesn't seem right. Let's see, if I move my rook up, force a rook trade, he takes my rook, I take his, and then that's actually checkmate. So yeah, my rook actually has to guard this mating square here. Yuck, okay. Can I offer the bishop trade? Okay, with my bishop here, he takes, I take, then that pawn becomes incredibly weak. Okay, yeah, let's actually move my queen here. Free up my rook to move about, so that my queen guards both the mate threat and this pawn. Yeah, so he can't take my bishop, because then I would just checkmate. Okay, this is going to turn into a blitz game if I'm not careful. Now I can move my bishop, or I'm going to move my bishop too. Let's see here, take, take. Yeah, and I don't think I'll be able to guard that pawn. Okay, yeah, I just got to move my bishop, let's say here. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that works. I can just push this pawn here. He thought he was going to skewer, but that's not actually a skewer. Okay. Let's move my king right here to protect this pawn. Allow my queen to move. Okay. He's threatening my knight. Let's protect it like this. Also offer the queen trade. Tight game here. Down to a minute. Gotta hurry. I'll definitely have to slow down my commentary. Okay, let's see here. Threaten the rook. I didn't trap the queen, did I? No, I didn't trap the queen. Okay, but I can... Can I bring my bishop up? Or my rook, rather? Can I bring my rook? If I bring my rook here, he brings his queen. Okay, yeah, let's just offer a trade. I'm afraid I'm gonna blunder just under time pressure. So I'm really hoping that I can just trade down into an endgame and win from there. Defending the pawn, also threatening the rook. That blunders a rook, thank you. Okay, I don't see how that changes anything. That's a free queen, thank you. Yeah, he's just acting out of desperation now. I expect a resignation. Yep, there we go. Okay. Oh, man. Yeah, I need to learn to play just a little bit faster. Like, I know there's a 10-second increment on these games, but yeah, this is... Okay, so let's go ahead and review this here. This was not an incredibly accurate game by either player. It did seem that in the middle game, there were some missed opportunities from both sides. So my opponent made several mistakes, and I failed to punish him for it several times in a row. Okay, but after that, my opponent continued to play less accurately, and then sort of gave me the advantage in the endgame. Okay, yeah, so definitely not the best performance, but let's see if we can review this and see how we did. Okay, so book move so far. Okay, so when they bring the bishop back, I'm actually not supposed to try to... I'm actually not supposed to threaten to trap it with the pawn. Okay, so I will need to remember that. Okay, so, yeah, just continue with development. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Really? I wasn't supposed to fiend shadow my bishop. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely have to go over the theory in this line. Yeah. So after I pushed my pawn, I was just supposed to fiend shadow. Okay, fair enough. Okay, pinning the knight was best. Okay, so that was the best move to counterattack the queen. Then I was supposed to take back the knight, good. Okay, so I was supposed to take the queen here. Let's see, let's go to analysis instead of game review. Okay, so I was supposed to take the queen, and then what happens if they take my pawn? Oh, of course they can't take my pawn because that hangs the bishop. Okay, so then what happens if they take my pawn with their bishop? Okay, that's an inaccuracy, because I can move here, take, and they allowed me to undouble my pawns, and now material is even. Okay, yeah, so it looks like material is even, but the pawn structure might be a little bit better for black. Yeah, okay. Alright, fair enough. Slide my rook over, fine. Okay, so how was I supposed to get out of this pin here? Okay, yeah, so the computer is actually oscillating back and forth between queen f6 and queen h4. So, yeah, queen f6 was what I actually played, but it looks like this one was just a little bit better. And then, oh, so he can actually take here, and then I take there, and then he skewers to get two pieces for the rook. Okay, fair enough. Then here again, then we repeat, and then he pins my bishop to my queen. Okay, that's fair. Okay, so, yeah, so it looks like in that line he would have been able to get two pieces for the rook, but what happens if he goes here? Then there, and then I just take, and it's an even exchange, and black's just a little bit better. So yeah, so it does actually look like queen f6 was actually the best move. It just depends on, you know, what depth of stockfish you're dealing with for the analysis. Okay. So getting out of the pin. Okay, so that was a mistake. What was I supposed to do here? Okay, so I had a sacrifice. I didn't see this sacrificing idea. So what happens if he takes with the queen? Oh, of course. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so if I take this pawn here, he can't take with the king because then I win as queen with a discover check. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so I didn't see that that pawn was loose. Yep, did not see that the pawn was loose. I see that now, obviously. That's like, this is a very puzzle position to win a pawn. You know, like if I had been shown this board position as a puzzle, I probably would have been able to see that. But yeah, in an actual game, it's just something that I missed. Okay. Okay, so that was a miss. Mistake taking back with the pawn. Okay, so what was I supposed to do here? Wait, really? I was supposed to push my g-pawn. Why? Yeah, I don't understand that move at all. He pushes here. I take. Slides over. Yeah, I do not understand that g-pawn move. Yep, don't understand it. Okay, whatever, Stockfish. Whatever you say. Okay. And then, okay, so that was a blunder. Then what was I supposed to do? Oh! That's why, okay. I'm sorry. Let's see, before, when I was supposed to push the g-pawn, right here, the bishop is trapped. Okay, of course. Of course, the bishop is trapped. Okay, yeah, that's why pushing the g-pawn works. Okay, yeah, I didn't see that I didn't see that pushing the g-pawn trapped the bishop. Okay, that's fair. That's totally fair. I didn't see that I could trap the bishop. Okay, so then that was a blunder, because then that allowed me to trap his bishop again, but yeah, I just didn't see it. Okay, then right here, so I was just supposed to take the rook. Then he takes here. Then here. Wait a minute, so how is that a blunder? It says that was a blunder, but I'm not like winning any material or mounting an attack or anything. So how is that a blunder? Okay, hang on a second. It says that's a blunder. Okay, hang on, let's go to the game review. They've made a mistake and now their pawn is lost. Okay, but according to these lines here, well, okay, and their bishop is still trapped, fair enough. Then take here. There. Okay, yeah, just some crazy Stockfish line. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I actually thought this bishop move was a good way to win a pawn. Because it says they've made a mistake and now their pawn is lost. But this move also still wins a pawn, right? Because if they take here, which the computer says is best, let's go to analysis. Then I take back. And now the game just continues with me up a pawn. Right? Take here, take. Boom. And let's say I take... Well, no, I can't take there because I still have to guard the mate threat, but then I push here. And then I win a pawn here. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, it looks like this is still an even game, but I did still win a pawn in that line. Okay, whatever. Okay, but regardless, right there is where they made their mistake, and that's still another miss. Okay, so what was I supposed to do here? Okay, so I was just supposed to move the bishop. Then why can't they take here, and then I take back with the pawn? Then what happens? Then here. Okay, and why can't he just threaten the pawn? What's the purpose of that knight move? What? Okay, so that forces a queen trade. Okay, and then that protects the pawn with the knight. Okay, fair enough. Pushes here. That's just a free pawn. Yeah, and from there, it looks like his rook is just on pawn guarding duty, stopping the promotion, and then eventually I would be able to bring my rook up and force a trade and promote the pawn. Okay, so that's fair. A lot of misses in this game for sure. Okay, bishop move is best. Whoa, hang on. Oh, that's a counterattack. Okay, yeah. So when he moved the bishop up here, he thought he was skewering, right? He thought he was going to be able to win my rook, and I thought that I had to protect my queen, but I don't. I can just move my queen out of the way, and that way if he takes my rook, then I take his rook with check. Okay, yeah, I didn't see that counterattack. That's fair enough. Okay, yeah, and then from here, it looks like everything else was pretty alright because he just hung all of his pieces under time pressure and then I win. Okay. Alright, well, kind of a sloppy game. Granted, I think a lot of those mistakes were just due to being low on the clock. But even still, I do definitely need to learn to speed up my pace just a little bit. Okay. Well, sorry for the sloppy game, but that is day 11 in the books, and we did get the win. So I'll see you all tomorrow for episode 12. Bye, y'all.